Lloyd Vance's football is back on 1029 The Game and the Coast Sports Network. So glad everybody can be with us this evening. Got a couple weeks off. We're back. And my man Kevin Midgette is back with me. And I guess Kevin climbed off down a light post because we all know he's Philly Kevin and his birds are going to the Super Bowl. What do you think? Are they tearing the city up? Are you behaving yourself? What's going on, man?
Well, one thing I will say, younger me might have done something stupid out there, but at the same time, older me, gravity is more of a factor now. I'm not really getting up that pole, whether it's greased or not. So I just couldn't believe the amount of people spewing all over the city just to celebrate a championship win. Mind you, is it a big win? Sure. Is it like enough where you're just going mad crazy? Absolutely not. I don't get it. It's like, what are we celebrating right now? Act like you've been there before because you know what? You have. And most of the times you've lost. Maybe that's why they're trying to enjoy it so much because the Eagles usually lose in the Super Bowl.
And it was just 2 years ago. They were just there in the big game, and they beat the Niners, and I didn't think it was as crazy as this time in terms of it, I guess I'll call them the young folks out there, and I think a big thing is they just want to be part of the show, and they all have cameras now on their phone and dance around, and they probably had too many cocktails, and you know. Like Nate tells me, weeds everywhere now. So I'm sure that was in the air too. So you know, hey, big win for them, and we'll talk about that and break the game all down. We were supposed. I talked to Nate, and I was like, "Come on, you want to come on the game on the show?" And he was like, oh, I can't, I can't. It just hurts too much." And we all know he's a Bills fan. Sorry, buddy. We've all been there, and Kevin will start with that game, and because this is the daunting side that the Eagles are going to have to face um, coming up in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. We'll break the game all down and all that in probably our next show. But this week, I just wanted to it was a very even match between the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Back and forth game. It was actually a better watch than the Eagles game. Kansas City prevails though 32-29. Mahomes puts on his Superman cape again, does a great job, and the underrated defense at Steve Spagnuolo, I think, definitely has to get a pat on the back.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. They just don't lose. When the playoff time comes around, they don't lose. I'm under the impression now that Buffalo will never win a Super Bowl, ever. Detroit never win a Super Bowl, ever. These franchises both had their best opportunities this year, and neither one of them could cash in on it. Josh Allen, I feel for the guy, but as well as they played this year, as well as he played, probably the MVP of the league this year, you really saw them without a star wide receiver in that game. That really took a lot out of them. Because, I mean, you can only do so much with Shakir out there, with Mac Hollins making the rounds, you know? It's like you need a stud wide receiver to take some attention away. We have nothing but a bunch of, like, slot guys and deep guys. I mean, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and in that situation, when they get rid of Diggs and everything, you'd say, okay, maybe they go to the Eagles playbook and try to run the ball down their throat with Davis and Cook, who had a very good year, and they kind of got away from that. And a lot of times they rely too much on Josh Allen and say, okay, make a play, make something happen. And they do need to, and this all, as you turn the page of the offseason, Brandon being their general manager, Sean McDermott, they're going to have to find some playmakers to put around him. And you do feel for the Buffalo fans in that town because, yes, you almost like, will this ever happen? And I know Philadelphia fans probably felt the same way for a long time. They were losing championship games. They went to the Super Bowl in '04 and lost, and just so many times they were bridesmaid, not a bride, and they finally broke through. So it may need to be some luck, kind of like what happened with Nick Foles and everything just coming together, that the Bills would need.
Yeah, I just don't understand some of the play calling and decision making in the back end of that fourth quarter of that game. I mean, you have Cook there who's not even on the field some of the time, not touching the ball, and they just keep running with Josh Allen the whole way. It's like they know what's coming. They knew when he like is turning right, turning left to stick the football out. They called that. The announcers called that out. It's like mix it up a little bit. It's like everyone knew what was coming, and we'll get to the Kincaid almost catch later as well. But I mean, it's they just this was it. I really believe
Yeah,
this
there
was
were
it, and they just let it go.
Yeah, they were snake bit, and It's interesting though because they had four fumbles and they jumped on all of them, so they didn't have the dreaded turnover. Patrick Mahomes did have the fumble, and I think it was Oliver dug it out, and you thought, okay, maybe they had opportunities. What did you think in terms of? I was on Rich's show earlier, and he asked me this question about Sean McDermott and his decision to go for two twice. Now I thought, okay, maybe the first time might have been a big thing, and they didn't do it, but then they tried it again, and then later on they were stuffed. So what did you think of that? Did you think it was a big play? Did it come back and bite him?
I'm more old school in the perception that analytics are stupid. I think it's one of those things. Sometimes take some points. Sometimes you have to punt the ball. It's not everything. Well, this lines up this way, so let's go for it. Let's do this. It's like just sometimes keep it as simple as possible and just get the points when you can. And they outthink themselves sometimes. Also, I think.
Yeah, and yeah, a big thing for Buffalo was they were 5 of 14 on third downs, and that caused them to have that urgency a lot of times on fourth down, where they were 4 for 6. But they I think they may have went for it a little too much on those fourth downs. Maybe sometime I don't know if they didn't trust their kicker or what, but they sometimes just take the points um, they that tush push. I think Spagnuolo the Eagles may need to watch that because I think Spagnuolo may have found a way to stop it. I don't know if it was that, the Bills, like they were saying, were going off that left side every time, but they were doing a pretty good job on their tush push.
Yeah, I mean, it beats Spagnuolo's approach. Definitely beat the effect Washington did by just jumping over the pile, Superman style, a bunch of times in a row. What the hell was that? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, you give Spagnuolo an extra week to concentrate on this, and obviously he knew Buffalo was going to run it, and he's handling it. Then he's seen how it worked against Buffalo, for better or worse, and he's going to fine tune it for that Super Bowl.
Yes, and it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But a lot of what you've commented on, or I do agree that Buffalo got tight in the moments in this game, and you had the leadership of the Chiefs. They have that DNA ilk. They know how to turn it on, turn it off. And Andy Reid's been there before, and he was calm and collective. And it's crazy because I was saying this on Rich's show. It's not the same guy that I covered all those years in Philadelphia. He's just a different guy with Kansas City. He trusted his defense. And think about that. He kicks the field goal and he said, "All right, the defense is going to be able to stop him." I know in the past he may have done something stupid in his Philadelphia days.
Almost definitely. And I mean, I think it's Philadelphia seeing that happen twice now. It happened when Vermeil was too, much of an iron fist when they went to the Super Bowl and lost. And when you saw him with the Rams, he was more laid back and got the approach that was necessary. Andy Reid the same way. He was just too much in his own way, and then finally he relaxed a little bit and he did things a little differently. And you see the juggernaut you see before you right now.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, I think, was a little tight coming out. You saw in that first drive, he threw two interceptions that shouldn't happen to Cook, and he didn't. And then they settled in, and to their credit, the Bills were scrappy. They seemed like they wanted to win this game, and their defense was, they were trying their best out there. Both teams only punted twice, so there weren't a lot of punts. It was like, okay, stop me on third down, fourth down, and then get the ball back. Only two sacks for both ways, and the numbers were real even. Now, talk about Patrick Mahomes. I was just saying his championship DNA. He just reminds me almost like Tiger Woods on Sunday, or when he was on his major run, or Michael Jordan. He's getting. I don't think he got a lot of calls, but it just seems like he always is going to find a way to win.
It's not only the fact he finds a way to win, it's he wins with different guys all over the place. I mean, you got Xavier Worthy, Kareem Hunt off the trash bins, their number one running back right now. Pacheco is barely seeing the ball after coming back from injury. And then you throw in Juju Smith Schuster, who was gone, then back. And then you got other guys like Hopkins is still there. Kelsey only had 2 receptions, and they still win. I mean, it doesn't matter who's out there. That Super Bowl year they beat the Eagles, Kadarius Toney goes off. I mean, Mahomes can win with anybody out there.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, and in terms of penalties, everybody was talking about that. The Buffalo at six and Kansas City at five. So I thought it was pretty even. I didn't see any of those egregious rough in the passer calls that everybody was so worried about. But there were a couple plays I wanted to touch on with you in terms of the officials. And Nate was texting me and he called me earlier. He's like, that fourth down play. Josh Allen gets the first down, they signal it, and then magically they review it. Now, was that a bad review? Was the fix in? And how can the NFL can they do something about these measurements?
Was the fix in? Yes. I'll be that guy. I'm like, yes, the fix was in. How are two referees so far apart on the other side of the line? Don't you look to see where that other ref is? One referee signaling first down on one side, the other guy comes from the other sideline behind the line. I mean, just like how wide receivers check they're behind the line. These guys should be on page where they're at, and they're coming from two different spots right there. It made no sense to me. And I'll couple that with the Dalton Kincaid pass at the end. There was a flag on the field,
Right.
and then mysteriously, now there's no flag. So, I mean,
Yeah,
what's
Jim
for
Jim
conspiracy
Nance
theory
like there's a
people?
flag on a play, and Nate says to me, he's like what they did was if he had caught that ball, that flag would have counted. So
Mm,
he definitely was in a conspiracy theory mode. And you know what? So many times you just see it with these championship level teams. It's almost like I used to watch boxing all the time, and you had to knock the champ out to beat him. You know, some of these times like yeah, they'd win an ugly decision. You're like that guy did not deserve that decision, but in the end, the officials they can say there's not looking for things, they're not trying to help one. It's just human nature, and I think the NFL probably would as good a story as Buffalo winning finally a Super Bowl would be. You know, the three-peat Kansas City dynasty is right up there. So, I'm not going to say the fix was in, but definitely a couple calls. The other one I wanted to ask you about was the one in the end zone with Xavier Worthy. Nate was talking about that one where it was a simultaneous catch, they'll say, and a receiver, Ty goes to the receiver. But it was interesting because how he wrestled the ball from him, and was it one of them already on the ground?
I thought the ball hit the ground without anyone having legitimate possession of it. And so for that part right there, and I mean, at at that point, the receiver's going to get the call, especially a Kansas City receiver playing in Kansas City. I mean, at that point, that was a foregone conclusion to me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Everybody's going to second guess this and that, and we've all been getting the memes on social media. Patrick Mahomes hugging the referees. Here's your Christmas gift, etc. It's like, all right, but in the end, I almost like baseball. Everybody used to always say about balls and strikes and how bad the umpires were. Well, in the end, you just got to say, okay, they stink, and let's move on from there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
don't trust them. Don't leave it in their hands. I thought overall it was a good back and forth effort. Mahomes, 18 of 26, 245, one TD. He rushed the ball 11 times for 43 yards and two TDs. The big thing was he had six first downs rushing the football. So it's a different Mahomes, and kind of like what you were saying, he beats you a variety of ways, and it's just not one guy that you can put your finger on and say, okay, we got to stop them. So that this is a challenge for Fangio and the Eagles, and I still think it's going to be a good game, but in the end, Buffalo, as you said, not enough talent. When Mac Hollins is your leading receiver, three receptions, 73 yards, and one T, that just says it all. And the funny thing about Mac Hollins is Rich Q had a prop bet he put in front of me. He's like, for $1, Mac Hollins two TDs, and it was a 7,000 payout. So, and
Wow.
I'm like, dude, you ain't hitting that, no way. And sure enough, Mac Hollins gets to what, the 40-yard TD, and then he's like, I got a chance, Lloyd, I got a chance. And if he had laid him out a little further, would he get tackled? He was down at the two or the one,
Yep.
somewhere around there.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was I could see dollar signs in Richie's eye. So, what do you think in terms of early look at Super Bowl? We won't get your final pick until next show, but is it Kansas City or bust?
I think the NFL is very happy with the matchup that they have. They have Kansas City going for a three-peat, and the Philadelphia Eagles, they're a big market. You probably have the Offensive Player of the Year on that side of the ball, and you're going to get good sound bites for the whole time off until the Super Bowl as well, with Sirianni and all the players involved. A.J. Brown's going to be asked about what book he's reading lately and everything, and it's just going to be a bunch of stuff back and forth. Enough with Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift stuff. You got Mahomes on the other end. It's going to be a good build up. The NFL got the ratings juggernaut on that they wanted. So I mean, I think it's going to play out well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. And you're listening to Lloyd Vance Insider Football here on 1029 The Game and the Coast Sports Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We are talking about Championship Sunday around the National Football League. Two spirited games, obviously. One was a little closer than the other, but Kevin and I have a lot of Phillies faithful that listen to our show, and we're going to talk about that side of the ball. And hopefully everybody's not as hungover and they're still listening. But the Eagles game, what a laugher! I mean, it was incredible. This game I thought was going to be close all along. I did predict an Eagles victory, and I had a Kansas City on the other side, but I just thought both games were going to be close. And I guess for a short period, this game was close. And then next thing you know, fumbles happened. Particularly, I thought the Jeremy Nichols fumble on that kickoff return was huge for them. But I just thought the Eagles were more relaxed and aggressive and smart than the Washington Commanders. I think the Commanders, yeah, they were desperate. So and it just turned out. And then once the snowball hill started rolling down a hill in terms of the turnovers, this game was over. So what did you think of this game? And uh, we'll talk about the Eagles' chances in a minute.
I think for I thought like you, I thought it was gonna be a close game. The third time you're playing someone, you're playing a division foe. You split during the season. I thought it was gonna be a close game, to be honest. You know how you keep the officials out of the game and making questionable calls? You smack the other team around, and that's what the Eagles did. They took any question out of that there was gonna be one call to decide this game. The one kudos I have to give to is Jalen Hurts' efficiency. He was very efficient throwing the football. He got everyone involved, and that's something we haven't seen in the previous games from Jalen Hurts. So it looks like he's healthy and he's good to go. And it looks like he's all right throwing the ball now. He was timid, a little trepidatious for a little bit, but it looks like he's getting ready to throw the ball.
Yes, and that's the big debate around here in Philadelphia where I'm at, and I listen to it from friends, family. I'm out, and uh, they're all asking all the time, is Hurts really a top five guy? Can he get it done? And I thought he was answering some of his critics yesterday. 20 of 28, 246, had a TD. Most importantly, no turnovers. Uh, his rushes, 10 rushes, 16 yards, but he did have three TDs. Obviously, the tush push factors into there, but Jalen Hurts he's efficient, as you're saying. He is their leader, and yeah, other than Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, maybe a few other guys, I wouldn't take anybody else instead of Hurts. And he's not looking to be the big story. He just wants to win. So talk to me
Mhm.
about Jalen Hurts and will people finally get off his back? I still had a lot of guys questioning, like, oh, he's not good enough, they're going to lose, etc.
I think one of the things that hurts Jalen the most is, no pun intended on this, is the fact is when he gives interviews and everything, he's almost like it's just monotone, sad
Hmm.
dog kind of thing, and it's like he doesn't have the vivacious personality, or you saw Lamar when he lost, like he was full of emotion and he said things, that you had to do earmuffs for and everything else, but you felt that guy's passion for the game. Jalen's just on point. He's just like, this is what we're doing. He's one of those guys, and I think the media and also fans look at it as a negative, as opposed to this guy's just really focused.
Yeah, it's a great point, Kevin. And he's about business, and he was a communications major in college, so he understands how to play the game with the media and so forth. But yeah, it does not endear himself to the media and the public because they're always going to not give him the best. I think when somebody kind of panders to the crowd, they always give him the benefit of the doubt and come on, attaboy, they'll pat him on the back. But in terms of thinking, okay, he's just a guy he's there for along for the ride, no emotion, he's a professional, etc. They're not going to back him. But I think fans probably should look and say, okay, he's steady. That's the most important thing you want from your quarterback. He's steady. He's not going to make mistakes that kill the team. And that's what happened in this game. It really wasn't, I was expecting Jaden Daniels to have that type of game, but it really wasn't him. Rookie quarterbacks now never, I think they're like 0-6 going back to like Flacco and Roethlisberger and some of those guys in terms of making the Super Bowl. It's just so hard for a rookie quarterback to see those adjustments. He did have an interception late, but it really wasn't his mistakes. Washington's roster when I was breaking this game down last week on a bunch of the shows for the network. They were you look roster man for man, they were undermanned. The Eagles were the better team and they showed it.
I agree entirely. We said a couple weeks ago even that Washington's playing with house money right now. They had nothing to lose. So, they sit there, you beat Tampa, then you go up to Detroit and you smoke them. And it's like, all right, let's see what we can get out of this. I mean, if they get touchdowns instead of field goals in the beginning of that game, and you're right, that fumble there by Nichols, or McNichols rather, at the end, or of the first half, that was a wrap right there. That was game over. Because at that point, the Eagles had their ears pinned back and they were just attacking them. So, I mean, Jaden Daniels is going to be a problem for the next decade for the Eagles. Yep. Did he get a lot of experience that he can use going forward? Most definitely. So, I mean, for Washington, it's a great year for them, but they definitely need pieces they have to add also.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I always like to take a snapshot and look forward to the teams when they're finally eliminated. And when you look at Washington, Adam Peters, who's their new GM there, Quinn, they've all done a great job with it because it was limited. You look at Daniel Snyder left an absolute mess, and they cleaned that thing up with Joshua Harris, the new owner, in a matter, an off season. So moving in the right direction, but you can't always say we'll get them next year because every year is different. You look at what happened to the Niners. They're at the Super Bowl in this season. They have injuries, defections, and a myriad of things, and they didn't even make the playoffs. And it's just so hard to get back to the mountaintop. So we'll see if they're able to do that. But as you said, playing with house money, I thought they did a great job against Tampa. Their Super Bowl may have been against the Lions. They were just so up for that game and they got it done. And then there's emotional letdown. And Philly's just such a tough place to play in terms of the fans. And the weather really wasn't a factor, but it just was a high pressure situation for them. One guy you got to talk about, not a lot of pressure, and you got to feel happy for him because this is a reason I think a lot of people love the Eagles this season is the Saquon Barkley story. I mean, 15 rushes, 118, three TDs. That first TD, the 60-yard run on the first offensive play of the game, it just set the tone, and you're like, Washington's got no shot. When, yeah, they have an 18-play drive. They get that field goal that you talk about, and it's like, Eagles like, what? Okay, here's Saquon. Take it to the house.
Yeah, that's. I mean, there aren't words to describe what Saquon Barkley's doing right now. We haven't seen this in a long time, and it's especially with the pass-driven league that we have right now. See a running back just thoroughly take over a game and shift the power, of the game as it goes on. So there's nothing else you can say about Barkley, and the fact he's the best running back in the league this year, no questions.
Yeah, and he's going to be the offensive player of the year. And you know, it- we always say the MVP is a quarterback award, but man, he should be in the mix because we talk about Jalen's intangibles and he's a leader, et cetera. Well, Saquon though is the engine of this team, and he's driving them. And definitely, you can't talk about Saquon without talking about that offensive line. All week, I'm looking at reports, and it was in flux. And the Eagles' offensive line, Stoutland, their coach, did a great job in getting these guys ready. Steen came in and played guard, and then you had Landon Dickerson playing, and he obviously was hurt with that knee injury. And then you had Jurgens gutted out from his back injury. They didn't think he was going to play. He played the second half. So just talk about the offensive line a little bit for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Once again, I think it's the best offensive line of football right there. I mean, they just sit there and they plug away. I mean, you lost potential Hall of Famer and Jason Kelsey, and they did not miss a beat at all. If, a matter of fact, they had a better year this year. Of course, the addition of Saquon helps a lot with that. I think they're definitely going to appreciate the next week off, to rest and heal up and get those guys as close to 100% as they can, because they're definitely banged up here going forward.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting because you got Chris Jones on the other side. Chris Jones and Jalen Carter are the two best defensive tackles in football. I mean, they're both trying to become the next Aaron Donald. They're both pretty close, and he's going to be a tough matchup for them. So they're going to have to get some health, and I'll be interested in watching one-on-one battles there. And then on the edge with Karlaftis, who really is a really underrated pass rusher, but the Eagles have done a great job, particularly that right side is all season. Becton has redefined himself It's just amazing. I remember him coming out of Louisville. He was supposed to be the guy at left tackle. The Jets drafted him very high, and he's found a home at that right guard spot, right next to Lane Johnson. And all Saquon's dominant runs have been behind those two.
Oh yeah, those guys are monsters. They rip a hole open. You and I are getting 5 to 8, let alone Saquon busting one for 60. So I mean, yeah, it just seems like even when they lose guys, they bring the right guys in. That goes to Stoutland right there. It was at Stoutland U, they call it right there. They
Yeah.
bring him in there, and he turns these guys into world beaters. So the offensive line sets the tone for the whole offense.
Yeah, and the Eagles are making their statement and say, look, Chiefs, we're coming to play. They had 459 total yards, rushed for 229 on 36 rushes, averaging 6.4 yards a carry. And you even saw their backup at the end. He came in there. He's busting a big run. And it's just a story of this team. And as you said, a couple of years ago, they're talking about all running backs are undervalued, don't pay them, etc. Well, the Eagles have flipped the narrative, and I think it really started right around the bye week where they decided to, you know what, they had some difficulty. I think it was down in New Orleans where they won the game, and then they lost against the Falcons earlier, where they had some difficulty in terms of throwing the football, a little too pass happy, in my opinion, of where 30 plus passes was a lot for Jalen. They went back to old school, running the football, and Saquon is just really hungry.
Yeah, it was Lane Johnson, I believe, and the other offensive line guys during the bye week were saying we want to run the ball. It's like we're tired of just throwing the ball thing. It's not getting it done. Let us do our job and let's run the ball. And sure enough, Sirianni, I'll give him credit. He listened, and it's been a different story ever since.
Yeah, and let's talk about Sirianni. What a story of a season, Kevin. You got him fighting with the fans when the Eagles, what they're playing Cleveland, it's a close game, and he's yelling at them, and he's always got the histrionics and the theatrics, and some people like him, some people can't stand him. Um, but we have to say he's a good coach, right? I mean, he's taking a team to what, his second Super Bowl in what, 4 years, something like that. Made the playoffs every year. His win totals ridiculous. Are they winning because of him or in spite of him?
Oh, it's in spite of him. There's no doubt in my mind. It's like, honest to God, this guy's going to his second Super Bowl already at his age, and he's never mentioned with the best coaches in the league. No one ever brings his name up. You'll catch him McVay and things like that, and Schottenheimers, and everyone else, Andy Reid, the legends, and stuff like that. But you never hear Nick Sirianni's name bannered about.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, everybody immediately is talking about the two coordinators. They're like, "Well, Kellen Moore may be in line for the Saints job. He's getting interviews around the league, and then Fangio, he's that crusty old veteran defensive guy that just knows what he's doing, and Sirianni's just letting him do his thing." So I guess you got to give Nick some credit, and he'll stick his chest out and tell everybody it's because of him, or he'll make sure he takes some kind of credit. But I think nationally, everybody's kind of like, oh, Sirianni. And it's going to be fun on media day and all the next 2 week build up when they put a microphone in his face. He better behave himself and not give any bulletin board material to the Chiefs.
Oh, he's going to do something dumb, I guarantee it. But the thing is, well, I like it. Sure, I'm looking forward to it. It's like that's one of those things. You want Nick Sirianni to be Nick Sirianni during media day. It's like, nah, you go ahead, man. You do you. So we'll see. And Andy Reid will, do his normal thing and give you nothing. So yeah, at least you got to have Sirianni jazz it up a bit.
Yeah, and the Eagles have some personalities. I can only imagine C.J. Gardner Johnson back to the Super Bowl, Jalen Carter. They put a mic in. A.J. Brown. You know, they better behave themselves because I know the Chiefs. They're going to tell they it's a business trip to them, and
Hmm.
that's what we were talking about. Yeah, the fans are partying in the streets and everything for the Eagles, but the team, they need to understand the mission's not done. This is just part of it, and I always harken back to when we were young. I remember when the Eagles beat Dallas finally in 1980. I mean, I was real young, but the city was just palpable. They acted like they won the game, and then next thing you know, the Raiders are waiting for them. Ironically, in New Orleans, and the Raiders beat the pants off them. And later on, Dick Vermeil and I talked to guys that were on that team. They said, yeah, we kind of lost our focus and we concentrated so much on Dallas. They were the mountain. We forgot that, the last step was winning the actual game.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I believe Vermeil didn't even let them stay in the city of New Orleans. He didn't want them any close to any of that stuff. While you got the Raiders out on Bourbon Street drinking a night or two beforehand. And the thing is, the Eagles beat the Raiders earlier that year as well. But
Right.
like you, I was a kid. I remember Wilbur Montgomery busting that touchdown. Taking it down. He basically sealed that Dallas game. So you're right, though. It's like the job's not done. They should know better because they had to play Kansas City not too long ago in the Super Bowl. So, but yeah, Kansas City, they probably just had a nice after dinner, after me football game dinner and just went to bed.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be fun to see how this shakes out over the next 2 weeks. And obviously, we'll have our breakdown and our picks next show. But you're listening to Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Coast Sports Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We're talking about the championship round. Uh, let's get to a couple news and notes around the league. Kevin, wanted to get your take on this. And we talk about this. I don't know why they're still the number one talking point on all the shows and everything because this franchise stinks. The Dallas Cowboys, they promote Brian Schottenheimer from offensive coordinator to be their head coach. And it's just like I've said it over and over again. This team will never move forward until Jerry Jones is, out of the mix because he wants a coach that he's going to not control, but he has to have a good working relationship with. I guess he had a good working relationship with Garrett and Wade Phillips and Dave Campo and all these other clowns. So, what are you thinking about this hire?
He wants nothing but a bunch of yes men. That's all he wants. Oh, it's another good job, Jerry. Oh yeah, it's a can't miss pick. Blah blah blah. Yeah, like I've said it many times. I want Jerry to live to be 110. Just keep running that organization, Jerry. You're doing a great job.
And then when you look at this division, you have the Giants. They're bringing back Joe Shane, their GM, and they're bringing back Brian Dable, who struggled. And then you have the Cowboys. Obviously, we're talking about they're still in flux, and they're paying Dak way too much money. Is it going to be the Eagles and Washington Commanders over the next 3-4 years fighting for this division because the other two are just so bad?
I'd say a good 5 years at least, to be honest. I mean, I don't see Dallas doing anything with the setup they have right now. That's for sure. And the Giants, I don't. You bring all these guys back. It's like, what did you see that you want to, get the band back together for another season? It's like you sit there, you bring the GM back, the head coach back for a team that stunk. So hey, let's do this one again. So I don't see any competition for Washington, Philadelphia from the rest of that division. Definitely.
Yeah, and in terms of other hires, the Lions. We didn't get to talk about the last game. The Lions, Washington took it to them, and they took advantage of turnovers. So every team that won in the divisional round protected the football, and then you had the Lions with Jared Goff turning the football over and over again. And like you said earlier, they may just be snake bitten. This like the Bengals and I know the Jaguars and the Panthers are new, but fairly new compared to some of the other franchises. They all seem to they just can't get over the hump and win the big one. Talked about the Lions and their magical season, and where do they go from here? Is Goff? Should they still stick with him?
I don't think they have a choice, to be honest. Because I mean, who are you going to bring in? Are you going to try to get Kirk Cousins to come in there now? And you sit there and roll with Jared Goff because you know him. I I don't know if they can get over the hump with Jared Goff. He's a guy that will, look great one game and then throw 3 to 4 picks the next game. That's just his DNA. That's who he is. But they have the talent on offense, that's for sure, if they can get it together. But this was their year, and the number one seed, the moment was too big for him, and it showed.
Yeah, it did, and those turnovers were huge. Jared Goff had three ints, including a pick six. He also had a fumble, and it just shows you quarterback play in the playoffs. Your quarterback's got to be dialed in. You just cannot have a guy that's turning the ball over and 5 turnovers in this game. Washington didn't have any. Um, and you see where the home teams were 8-2. going into this week, and now they're 10-2. So is home field advantage still a big thing in the NFL? A lot of times they're talking about parity during the regular season, but I think the crowds and everything, it does factor into it. And let's not forget the officials. When the home team always seems to get some cooking.
Yeah, but I think it also comes with the onus of winning, enough games to get that home game as well. I think you're at least getting one or two calls for having the home game. I will give Washington credit though. That Detroit crowd, they were loud. They were just screaming left and right. That was a hostile environment to go into, and it didn't phase them at all. And I agree with you what you said earlier. I think that was their Super Bowl. They won that, and they were just emotionally spent going into that Philadelphia game.
Yeah, and they had some success, the Lions, and when that happens, your coaches get poached, and so now you got Aaron Glenn. He's with the Jets, and Ben Johnson goes to the Bears. He's going to try to fix your guy, Caleb Williams. So talk about those situations. I'll start with the Jets. So the Jets going to be any better? I still think they're much like the Cowboys. Woody Johnson's kind of a meddling owner. They don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to retire. But what kind of situation is Aaron Glenn stepping in with the New York Jets?
He's stepping in a situation where it's not that bad on paper if you look at it. It's just the one key thing they're really missing is what? A quarterback. And that's what you need to win in the league as well. They have some very nice complementary pieces going on. And I think with the defense, he can definitely help out with that. But until you get that quarterback straightened out, you cannot win in this league.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. They do have some pieces. They have, particularly on defense, they have some young guys there. Maybe he'll be able to fix them, but offensively, it's going to be interesting to see how he rebuilds that group. And I heard he's talking about maybe bringing Bobby Slowick, who got fired by the Texans, in as the offense coordinator, and got a lot of work to do. It's going to start with Aaron Rodgers. I think he'll take some, a vacation like he always does and decide what he's going to do. But at 41, uh, I just don't know how much he has left in the tank. So yeah, the Jets are going to be work in progress. The other offensive on the offensive side of the ball for the Lions, you have Ben Johnson going to the Bears. I was surprised because I didn't know if this one was going to get done, but he goes there. He's their guy. Can he fix Caleb Williams, and will they be able to compete with the rest of this? Don't forget this division was one of the best in the league this year.
Yeah, the division with all the double digit game winners that nobody won in the playoffs. Great on paper.
How about it?
Uh, was it Caleb Williams? I mean, the kid's, I will call him a kid. He's played one season in the NFL. He's got time to straighten him out and everything else if he can do it. If Caleb Williams has a dedication to do it. But you've seen these flavor of the month coaches. They have like the good season, the coordinators that go somewhere else, and then that team still doesn't do anything. Doesn't mean he's ready to be a head coach because he had a good season as an offensive coordinator. So we'll see if the matchup of those two like pays off for Chicago.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting because the biggest thing is he's got to work with him on getting that ball out in rhythm, and that's what you saw with the four quarterbacks that played this weekend. They got that ball out. They weren't holding it. They weren't taking sacks. That was Jalen Hurts' Achilles heel in the win against the Rams. But he was getting the ball out of his hands, and that's what you want because Caleb Williams, he led the NFL in sacks this year. He was approaching the old record held by David Carr back in the day, and I still remember when Randall Cunningham was a young quarterback. He held that record because he was getting sacked so much, and I think also the Bears have to fix their offensive line. Their offensive line's just been a mess. They need to find a consistent running back. I don't know about Swift there in terms there, and then defensively they have some pieces, but I think they need to get younger at linebacker.
Yeah, they're definitely a work in progress. And with everyone that's in front of them right now, the Vikings are going to be interesting to see what they do with Sam Darnold and McCarthy coming back to see how healthy he is. Because Minnesota has to figure out what they're doing. You sat there and took this quarterback with the number one pick, and then you had Darnold go off like he did this year. What are you going to do with that situation?
Yeah, now I've been talking with some guys, and they all think Darnold's probably going to be franchise tag just to bring him back because that was a pretty bad injury that J.J. McCarthy had. He tore like two ligaments in that knee, and he's going to need time to come back. But I'll ask you, dude, should they pay? is Darnold worth? I think I know the answer, but is he really worth $50 million?
In today's market, sure, why not? These guys are getting paid and checks written for them left and right. For a team I was running or rooting for, would I want them to sign Sam Darnold for $50 million? Absolutely not. Not a chance with that USC pedigree.
Yeah, that's a lot, and you saw the way that he played in the playoffs, and I was texting a bunch of guys, and I was like, there he is. I've been waiting all season for this guy to show up, and sure enough, he did, and in the wrong moment. And as you said, they had won all those games, 14 games, and it's like the regular season don't mean nothing because you're just gone
Hmm.
in the blink of an eye, and then you had Washington come in as the sixth seed, and they were able to make some noise. So the other one we're going to talk about here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Coast Sports Network, other coaching changes. And this was a head scratcher. Pete Carroll gets the job with the Raiders. The Raiders, I was saying this to Nate. I was like, the Raiders were good back in the day. I mean, when we were coming up, the Raiders were a feared organization. But now it's just like, what the bleep are they doing? Carroll, they always say he's a young 70 something, but I just don't know how he relates to these young guys today, and where do they go from here, because they don't have a quarterback. Yes, they have a high draft pick, but where do the Raiders go after taking Pete Carroll?
I, like most people, were like, what? Pete Carroll was even doing interviews. He was in this mix at all. So, I mean, I don't. I think the Raiders. I think Davis is basically his dad would be, doing that face plant emoji like this, seeing like some of the stuff that he's doing. So I mean, the thing is too, Pete Carroll got what, like a 4 year contract with a extended year maybe or option year. It's like, isn't he like 72, 73? It's like at a certain point, it's like, let's just do this year by year and see how it goes. I mean, good for him. I don't begrudge anyone. The guy was retired. He's probably bored. He's like, this is what I know, this is what I do. But they don't have pieces there also. Your best receiver is a tight end right now. You have no quarterback. So they got a lot of work to do there.
They do, and they have some high draft picks coming up, and maybe they'll be able to figure it out. And but yeah, that was definitely a head scratcher, and um, yeah, Liam Cohen, he's the offense coordinator for the Bucks, kind of like what you're alluding to earlier. Yes, he fixed Baker Mayfield, and he did a good job there. But now he's going to a Jaguar situation, and you wonder, like, okay, is he going to be able to clean up this mess here? Because on Trevor Lawrence, high draft pick, number one overall, but he's been underachieving. Can Liam Cohen go to the Jaguars and fix that situation?
The one thing with Jacksonville is they actually have some offensive weapons on that side of the ball. And if he can get Trevor Lawrence healthy, healthy being the key word, you can get a healthy season out of Trevor Lawrence. The talent is there that he can do it. He's shown, flashes of, borderline brilliance, getting to the playoffs, things like that. So, I mean, was it a step back year last year? Most definitely. But you get him healthy and you get the right guy helping him, go forward. That's a possibility that could work for him.
Yeah, it could, and it's a good opportunity because that division. Let's face it, 10 wins could get that team into the playoffs, and then they could go from there. They do have some pieces offensively, as you were saying, with Robinson Jr. I like what he's doing. Kirk got hurt this year, but maybe they got to figure out what to do with ATN. Offensive line, I think, they're another team. They got to fix that offensive line first and foremost, and that'll help Trevor Lawrence stay healthy, keep him on the field. And then defensively, they have to build around some of they have Trayvon Walker there, former number one overall pick, but they got to build them around players like that. So, uh, interesting hire there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The big saga was, Liam Cohen he said he wasn't coming until they got rid of Trent Baalke, their general manager. So they get rid of Baalke. Liam Cohen says, all right. Now, the thing about Shad Khan is he's kind of hands off. I almost feel like with the Jaguars, why don't they just move over to London full time? Because why does Jacksonville even have a team? It's a sleepy place.
No, yeah, I mean, even when they put the franchise there to begin with, it's like, why Jacksonville? And they were getting their biggest sellouts of the year when they'd play in London. So I mean, it just made more sense for me. If you want to make the game global, as I know they do, that would be the perfect fit. But Jacksonville, right there, you're just in the quagmire.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, you got Jacksonville, and then you have other football hotbeds, in the South, that possibly could have, like Birmingham, Memphis, some other places that probably would have wanted a team supported it. But yeah, we'll see where the Jaguars go. And the last one, the New Orleans Saints. There, that opening still. That's the last one. Now the name you're hearing Kellen Moore. Maybe they're waiting for him and the Eagles after the Super Bowl. But the other name being bandied around is Mike McCarthy. I mean, how could he get another job? I mean, seriously.
It's the old boys network. You know how that goes. It's like these guys just keep getting kicked around. Oh, here's another job. Oh, here's a name we know. It's like that's what they do. It's like these guys just bounce around from job to job, and as long as there's enough bad, mediocre teams, they're going to get another shot.
Yeah, and the billionaires are going to, it's their money. But I think any coach, much like like Mike Tomlin and some of these, once you win that Super Bowl, you're kind of annoyed. Pete Carroll, he has one in his back pocket, and they're like, oh, you can do it. I can do it again in another place. And usually, it's the second stop where the guy's just awful. I mean, look at Doug Peterson, guy
Hmm.
like that. Mike Holmgren, he struggled in his second stop. He did get to Seattle to the Super Bowl, but never won another one. And it's just George Seifert. He was terrible after he left the Niners, going to the Panthers. It's just so hard to do, and that's why, I do love watching the players like the Eagles players and the Chiefs players. Just so happy because yeah, it's a snapshot in time, and it'll never be the same again. So, um, every team's different every season. We're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Uh, so, Kevin, talking about all these changes and everything, and I thought this: do you think Dion will ever get a job in the NFL? I immediately was like, I just didn't think he was a good fit for the NFL game.
I think Dion will get a job if Dion wants a job in the NFL. There is no way you have all these teams, and if Dion says, I want to be a head coach in the NFL, somebody's not going to take a shot on him. Especially, it's like you get a smaller franchise or a more lowly franchise, that's struggling at the bottom of their division. He's name cachet. He puts butts in seats, and that was a thing. So if Dion wants a job, Dion will eventually get a job.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think as he keeps doing well with Colorado, I think more owners may give him a look. But the interesting thing was I just didn't see him in Dallas coming. As crazy as Jerry Jones is, I just couldn't see him dealing with the show that Dion brings. So it'll probably be another team, another place. Now, speaking of Deion Sanders, the number one pick in the draft is coming up. They have the combine, all that fun stuff. We'll talk about that. The Tennessee Titans have the number one overall pick. Should they take a quarterback, and will it be Cam Ward or Sanders if they do?
I think they take a quarterback. I think they stick with it instead of trade him back. And I think it's Cam Ward. I think Ward's going to come out to be the number one quarterback taken in this draft.
Yeah. Now Cam Ward, he's a little bit more mobile, than Shador. Shador Sanders is more of a pocket guy, and um, Ward has bounced around a little bit. You wonder about his accuracy, but yeah, I do kind of agree with you that Ward probably will be the pick over Sanders, and I want to see at the Senior Bowl and the East West Shrine game and the Combine how Shador handles the bright lights because the NFL they're like, all right, we're going to do things our way, and he's going to have to go in there in those interviews and impress the owners and the general managers and kind of say, I'm ready to be the number one pick.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you got to think also. It's like the league is more geared towards quarterbacks that are mobile, that can get out, that can run a little bit right now. So if you're more of a stiff pocket passer, you get a choice between the two, who you're going to lean towards. It's probably going to be Cam.
Yeah, and now, all right, let's say Cam Moore goes number one to Tennessee. You're the New York Giants. You have that second pick. Obviously, they got rid of Daniel Jones. He's now I think he's going to be the Vikings, still under contract. I'm not sure there, but do they go Travis Hunter, who's probably the next best player on the board, or do they go quarterback there?
I guarantee we're going to see a run like we did last year. People are going to trade up, make all these deals, and there'll probably be another four quarterbacks that go in the top 10 picks. And should they go in there? No. But they will do it because that's how desperate people are to get their franchise quarterback, that they will mortgage their future with a chance to get a number one quarterback.
Yeah, and they're always going to, and especially if they do well at these off-season events that I'm talking about. If they do the interview well, they throw the football, their private workout. Scouts and GMs, they get enamored with these guys, and the crazy thing is, right now, every team has their first round pick for the first time in quite a while. So they all have their first round pick. But do think a lot of these younger general managers, guys like Howie Roseman and some of these other guys, they are willing to trade. They're willing to jump around. It's not like the olden days where guys would hold on to their picks and not talk to each other. And most of them have grown up in the same ranks in scouting departments around the league, so they know each other. So I do think there'll be some wheeling and dealing, and we'll see some movement there. Wanted to get Kevin's take on, and we didn't get to talk last week. You're in Baltimore area, you're pretty close there, and you know a lot of Ravens people. What are they going to, can they get over the hump? What did you think of the way Lamar Jackson played in the game? I really didn't think that a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the loss is on him." Yeah, I know he had a bad fumble and etc. But uh, I thought he played pretty well against the Buffalo Bills.
No, Lamar's legit. You can't hang it on him. And then people are trying to beat up on Mark Andrews, for his fumble that he had and then the drop 2 point conversion as well. It's just my thing with the Baltimore Ravens right now. Do you have a nice, quiet, closed door meeting with Justin Tucker and be like, "Hey, buddy, hey, how you feeling? It's been a good run. You done? You think you're done? You're all kicked out?" Because that would be a PR nightmare if you sit there and try to force Justin Tucker out of Baltimore. That's how revered that guy is. But at the same time, it's like, "Hey, buddy, I think we're good here." That kind of thing. You got to give him one of those talks. Just like Jake Elliott's probably going to get in 2 weeks as well. Yeah, I said it.
Wow, and that that's a big thing as we're going to break down the Eagles game. I was talking to a bunch of shows. It That's got to be scary for the Eagles in terms of Jake Elliott. As soon as he lined that kick up, I was like, he's not making this. He not, and sure enough,
Uh-huh.
he shanked it. He did make all his extra points, hurrah, hurrah! But he did not factor into this NFC Championship game. But I just feel like the way, and we've talked about the Chiefs. They win all these one-score games. The kicking game is going to be huge going into the Super Bowl. So I do agree with you, but Baltimore. Um, and Justin Tucker and how Elliott's efforts may factor into Eagles Super Bowl prep. What do you think in terms of Ravens? Where do they go from here? Is Lamar the guy? Um, what do they build around with him? I still thought they had a very good season. Derrick Henry had the rebirth, but he's going to be about 32 years old. I still think they probably need to go and get, we've been talking about this forever, some receiving help for him. Flowers got hurt, and it just didn't seem to be a lot.
Yeah, he's never had that number one wide receiver since he's been there. They drafted Bateman with the number one pick, and he's turned out to be Nelson Aguilar on a good day. And then they also have Nelson Aguilar there still, and he's way past his prime of what he had. So I mean, yeah, they need to get a wide receiver there. I mean, if you could get him somebody like a Diggs kind of guy, even an old Devonte Adams, something like that. Give him some legitimacy on the outside. It would do wonders for that offense.
Yeah, and speaking of Mark Andrews, I was on Rich's show, and he asked me, he was like, Lloyd, should he have apologized? And I said, hell no, he shouldn't apologize. All right, he screwed up. Everybody does, Scott Norwood, et cetera. We can all point to, the guy that had the goat ears. But quality player, look, he dropped the ball. You know, Bad drop, bad situation, but good teams find a way to win, and other teams find a way to lose. So just talk about Mark Andrews and where you think his head's at, and is he going to be able to endear himself back to the Baltimore faithful?
Well, the problem is with Mark Andrews, he's on the back end of his career right now. which is, been a Pro Bowler, most of his career. And the emergence of Isaiah Likely is, becoming more and more prominent with the Baltimore offense. I the guy's done a lot for that franchise. It happens. I mean, shoot, remember when the Eagles playoff game, Alshon Jeffrey has the ball go right through his hands the year after the Eagles win the Super Bowl. I've never seen a wide receiver get a bigger pass in my entire life
I
when they
forgot
did.
about that. Yeah.
Because the whole thing is they just won the Super Bowl. Alshon was a big part of that, and the ball goes through his hands. They lose to the Saints, and everyone's like, "It's all right, Alshon." You kind of forgive it a little bit because you just won that one. Mark Andrews are going to look back. It's like, you know what? You're okay. You get a pass. That's your pass.
Yeah. And somebody was equating it. Is he going to be the Jackie Smith of this gen?
No,
I know a lot of people don't remember. He was a longtime Cardinals Hall of Fame tight end. And like his last year of his career, he goes to Dallas, drops the ball. I mean, right in his breadbasket in the end zone, and Dallas loses the game to the Steelers. I mean, nobody's crying for him, but you know, is it going to be that type of situation? Everybody going to talk about him dropping that 2 point conversion.
Lucky for him, I guess if you could put a positive spin on this, it was in an early playoff round.
Yeah,
If that's a conference championship or a Super Bowl, then it's a different story. Then they're doing burning jerseys in effigy and everything else. But I think we'll get a little pass on this one.
yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, it's a divisional round, and they always say about the news cycle. It takes 1 week, so
Mhm.
this week they talked about okay, leave him be. It was crazy. They start some some Buffalo fans started a GoFundMe for him where they're raising money for his charity. And now I hear Baltimore fans are doing the same thing for Kincaid. I don't think it was the same type of drop. That was a tough play for Kincaid. That was, that ball was hanging up there. He's diving forward. He probably still should have caught it, but the flag was on the play. You feel for him, but yeah, just tell you about. Do you think? Yeah, so let's in the last few minutes or so, we'll go over kind of what do you think in terms of how do you beat the Chiefs? How do you beat? What is the formula? What is the formula?
Nobody knows. That's the thing, Lloyd. Nobody knows how to beat him in the playoffs. It's like you keep on trying these different blueprints, and then it's like an etch a sketch. You just shake it, and it's like, all right, that one didn't work. Next team, try a new one. No one's figured out the formula. I mean, if it was me, the one thing you could do is try to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. Sit there, run the ball, run the clock, win time of possession, and of course, most importantly, don't turn the ball over. Because that's what cost the Eagles the Super Bowl last time. If you look back, was the Jalen Hurts fumble that got returned for a touchdown. So I think those are the big, keys they have to work on.
Yeah, and Mahomes 17-3 in the playoffs. It's just so hard to beat him. I think a big thing is you got to look at what Tampa Bay did to him. You got to hit him early and often. That offensive line, eh, they still have some holes there. Now Tooney's playing well at left tackle. He's really a guard. You got to beat him around that edge. Maybe the Eagles try to get him matched up one on one with Sweat. Noah Smith is playing so well right now. Um, a guy I beat him up. You know what I mean? I was like,
Mhm.
he's undersized. I don't think he's going to get done. But
Same.
but
Yeah.
that situation,
That's it.
I
Yeah.
humbly apologize, Noah Smith. You know what I mean? But talk
Yeah.
about
Two times.
Noah Smith with him and the pass rush, and can they get that heat on Patrick Mahomes?
Ugh, you got to think about some of these guys, though, also like Nolan Smith. They're playing in the biggest game of their lives. Like some of these guys haven't been in that Super Bowl environment, and it's all depends on how you treat that energy, that adrenaline that pumps through you. You either control it or it controls you. And if it takes you a quarter or so to settle in, well, you know what? Mahomes just settled in for a quarter as well. And now you're in trouble. So they
Yeah.
really got to come out quick against them.
Yeah, and I talked to a couple quarterbacks that started the Super Bowl, and one of them told me his success was I treated it like another game. I tried to as best as I could. Me and the coaching staff, that's the way we approached it because you're right. How many times have we seen this is what Super Bowl 59? How many times where one team is tight and they just come in there and get their doors blown off them? I mean, we've seen it so many times over and over again. It even happened to Peyton Manning in the Denver Broncos. You know what I mean? They got killed in the Super Bowl. So I'm hoping for a close game. obviously from all my friends and family. My father was calling me, season ticket holder. He's excited, Um, but yeah, definitely over the next week or so, we'll talk more about him. But yeah, they gotta harass him. They gotta hit him because Mahomes only hit 2 times, sacked 2 times this game. He was able to run, and I actually liked what Joe Witt had said, not the way he said it about we're going to treat him, but that's the way you got to hit a quarterback. Treat him like a running back. So, do you think Mahomes will keep running? And if so, maybe the Eagles take him out. Hey, I always remember Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl that the Eagles won. That hit by Malcolm that set the tone, and he was done after that. Cooks was done, and that was a big loss for the Patriots.
Malcolm blew him up. That was like you heard that from the field. It was like, ow! People reacted to that. The thing is, Kansas City. All right, just throwing this out there. Patrick Mahomes gets knocked out of the game. Who comes in the quarterback for the Chiefs? Carson Wentz against Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl.
Oh
Oh my
my
gosh.
goodness gracious! Well, I guarantee you this: the Chiefs fans will need some man acid because you talking about turnovers will
Mhm.
kill you. Don't worry,
Mhm.
he'll start turning the ball over real quick. So that was
Mhm.
his Achilles heel at the end with the Eagles and with the Colts and Washington too. They all
Mhm.
somehow they thought they could fix him, like we were talking about with Sam Darnold. Look, once a quarterback's broken, you're more than likely are not going to fix him. I know Kurt Warner went, had a rebirth with the Cardinals, but you're not going to see that too often. So, yeah, so I think that's a key um, in beating the Chiefs. Obviously, it was interesting to me. What do you think about Kelsey? He did not do a lot in this game. He had a couple blocks. He was a little feisty out there, but is he going to need to be more involved on Super Bowl Sunday?
I think Travis Kelsey's definitely on the back end of his career. This whole season, to be honest, I don't know if it's what's going on outside his football work environment or with his podcast and his dating life and all the other all the gigs he's
Right.
getting for advertising. It's he wasn't the same receiver this year. I mean, Father Time's undefeated, so maybe he did take that backslide as well combined with it. But you saw Noah Gray was starting to get some reps and attention and receptions during the midway to the back end of the season. So I mean, if Kelsey can be anything out there, he still has his games from time to time, but he's not the dependable reception machine he used to be.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because when I was watching the game yesterday with the Eagles, Blanket Chip has some problems in coverage, and Zach Ertz was having a day out there. He had 11 catches, 104. I know some of the catches were late when in I don't care time, but he had some big catches before the garbage time. Um, are the Eagles? Do you think they need to look at the way they're covering the tight end, just the limit what Gray and Kelsey could do?
I think they better because I guarantee you, Andy Reid in Kansas City's checking it out, and they're going to notice what happened with Zach Ertz that last game, and if they see a trend in there, they're going to attack it.
Yeah, and what about Oren Burks? I think he played. He was solid. But he is a backup, and Zach Bourne can't be everywhere. I know he had like double-digit tackles again. He had a forced fumble recovery. He seemed to be everywhere. But how important is Burks going to be in this game?
I think it's going to be an issue where he's going to have to play and he's going to have to actually contribute, and it can't be a liability out there. I think it's one of those all hands on deck, and it's like everyone's got to bring their A game. If not, you're going to be in the back end of the win column.
And then what do you think about and it must be special for the rookies on this team. You're like, wow, the rookies on the Eagles. You have Cooper DeJean, and then you have Quinyon Mitchell had a very good game. He had a nice pick against Washington. These young guys, they don't think it's going to happen every year, but they're going to the Super Bowl. And are they going to be a factor along for the ride? What do you think about the rookies?
I think they're going to be a factor. I really do. I don't want to say the lack of ability with the Kansas City wide receivers, but they don't have that daunting stud receiver that you're more concerned about. I think Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, they're going to settle in. They're going to feel right at home there. I don't think they're going to be worried, I should say, about nervous going into the game. I think they're going to be up to the challenge.
Yeah, and probably next show we'll get one of my NFL guys that'll be boots on the ground in New Orleans to get their take. And I did the whole Radio Row thing before. It's crazy. It going there, it was fun, but then I was glad I left before the game. I mean, just going to all the pre stuff was enough for me because the Super Bowl is kind of like a corporate event. It's
Mhm.
you know it it's big money. People always say to me, "Oh, the tickets." I'm like, "Yeah, have fun doing that." You're gonna take a second mortgage now. Would younger Kevin have done that? Would his Eagles were the main thing, and would he put 5 grand down to go to the or more to go to the game for one game?
I actually had a chance to go when the Eagles played New England in Jacksonville.
Okay,
And the
yeah,
thing that swung me away from it, first of all, it was like some bus thing going down and all this other. I'm like, man, I'm not driving down to Jacksonville. I did that when I was a kid, and that was a long ride, let alone as an adult. And the thing is, what swung me was the Super Bowl was in Jacksonville. If you would have put me in New Orleans, Miami, something in California, I would have been all right. So I did pass on that. No, there's no way I'm spending 5 grand. Once again, younger me, of course, means single me. My wife would kill me if I
yeah,
said I just spent
exactly.
5 grand on a ticket. But yeah, it's like it depends where the Super Bowl is if you're making the trip.
It's going to be interesting. I hope the New Orleans Police Department's ready
Oh yeah.
because you got the Eagles folks coming down there, and they travel well. I mean, I have friends and family, and they go to away trips, and it just seemed far fetched. They were like, "Oh, we're going to New Orleans. We're going to go on Bourbon Street." And all that. I'm thinking, they'll find, something will happen. But sure enough, they're going. A couple of my cousins went to Rio for the first game, so they'll probably go down to this. So it's
Nice.
probably going to be one big party, and hopefully everybody's safe and uh, doesn't get too crazy down there. And we're talking about the keys of the game here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029, the game, the Coast Sports Network. Uh, and another thing underrated, and we talk about some of the keys before we'll break it down more next week. Um, the Chiefs' defense is very underrated. I mean, their defense all season has done a good job in terms of what they were ranked. Points allowed, they only allowed 368, which is about 21.6 points per game. All season, we were saying, okay, Patrick Mahomes, he's a little bit off, and they had to win games kind of ugly, but that defense has always done a great job. Is Spagnuolo going to be able to come up with a plan to kind of shut down Saquon Barkley? Because that's going to be the key to me. I mean, Saquon Barkley, if the Eagles are smart, they say, you know what, we're just going to stick with the horse that brought us here.
And that is key as well because it's like you can see Sirianni wanting to get cute. It's like instead of Saquon, it's like, oh, we're going to throw him off here. We're going to outthink them and we're going to start throwing the ball. No, you feed Saquon Barkley until you can't. Until if Spagnuolo shows you that he can stop him, then you adjust your game plan. But you come out there, you just keep feeding Barkley.
Yeah, Barkley's got to get 30 touches. Whether it's 25 rushes, 5 swing passes, etc. But they got to find ways to get him going. And you see Saquon, he is hungry. And somebody talked about him. I was hearing on the radio today. There's a catalyst. Can he be the Moses Malone in 1983, the Pete Rose in 1980 to get this team over the hump? I mean, they got to give him that opportunity behind that offensive line. Those big guys, they want the ball. And then the biggest question in the room, Jalen Hurts, is is he ready? I know last time it was the fumble, and Bolton had picked up the fumble and ran it in for a touchdown, and that kind of swung the Super Bowl. Overall, he played pretty well in the game. But do you think this is a different Jalen Hurts than 2022 and going to the Super Bowl?
I think definitely it is. I think Jalen knows what to expect now. He knows what to expect of the week off beforehand. You said, the media row, all that stuff. He knows what's going to be expected of him going into it and how to get his preparation right and what he's going to have to look for and what he can blow off that he maybe have paid more attention to the last time he was there. So I think Jalen's definitely more than up to the challenge for this.
Yeah, and he's a veteran leader, and that's they have a lot of guys that were on. Well, not even a lot anymore. I think they said there was only 4 guys left from the 2017 team, but from the 2022 team, there's a lot of guys that got experience of going to the Super Bowl, and the most important thing is treating it, as I was saying earlier, like a business trip. Don't get too high, don't get too low. Take care of their family business. Well, get all their cousins and their wives, wives and kids, and get them all settled, and then focus on the game. So, going to be a huge battle going in Philadelphia against Kansas City, and came out. The Chiefs are 1.5 point favorite, but as I was saying, they have not blown out a lot of teams this season. One score games, they're now 17-1 in their last 18 one score games. And they won like 17 in a row. So it may be mission impossible, but I know the Eagles are going to try their best to go in there. But like you were saying, that you got to worry about Sirianni. Don't overthink it. Maybe he leans on Kellen Moore, and um, not that he's been to the Super Bowl, given his Cowboys pedigree, but that's
Yeah.
another story. But
Yeah, right.
he's got to lean on his staff and the players that have been there before. So another great week here. We got a couple more minutes. Uh, I'll ask you real quick. The MVP, the vote, they started inviting everybody. We'll talk about the awards. I think most of these are slam dunks. I think Josh Allen's going to get the MVP. I think Saquon will be the offensive player of the year, and I think Jaden Daniels will be the offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, they're pretty all foregone conclusions right now. The only debate you might have had is if Saquon could have broke Dickerson's record, and maybe you had more of a debate at that point. But I mean, like we said before, it's a quarterback award, and Josh Allen was going to get it this year. Burrow had too many losses, even though he had a great season. Lamar Jackson, there's only so much hardware they're going to give one man. It's like they're just going to let someone else win it some years. We've talked about they do that in other sports as well. So yeah, this is Josh Allen's award this year. Saquon's Offense Player of the Year. In my opinion, he's the MVP of the league this year, but I don't get a vote, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. And then how about Coach of the Year? A lot of interesting names bouncing around. I probably would say, all right, give it to Dan Quinn, given the way he's changed the Lions environment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple little arguments you can make for other coaches, but I mean, the Minnesota, that was an unexpected job this year. You had Sean Payton in Denver. Nobody expected them to do what they did this year. But to go out and get the number one seed like Detroit did, it's Dan Campbell's award, I believe.
Man, it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. And the awards are awards. And then that's what I always said in terms of Saquon breaking a record. And then, is he MVP? And um, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. And I think that's what he's focused on. We'll see if the team keeps their head, unlike their fans. So, the fans are partying in the street. So, but that's what fans do. They're fanatics. Everybody's got to keep that separate. The fans and how they feel about them, and the team itself. Because this is a likable team. They're playing really well, and the Chiefs on the other side they're business like, and it's like three-peat would be history. But in the end, you know do you have fatigue with the Chiefs? Is there that fatigue? You're like, enough's enough.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't unless you're a Kansas City fan? I mean, did anyone else see the meme of the map of the United States and what the country's
Yes.
voting for? The Chiefs were like the only circle in Kansas City, or Kansas rather. Philadelphia, you had one for the Eagles, and the rest of the map said, I hope a meteor hits it. Because no one's rooting for either one of those two teams. So, but I think the NFL lucked out in one way because you got the two best teams in the league from each conference playing in the Super Bowl, and that's what you want to see.
Yeah, I think you have two quality teams, and it's going to be a fun build up these 2 weeks, and uh, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not ready to give my pick. I know back in August I said Chiefs and three-peat, but we'll see. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Thanks for Angel Behind the Glass and Kevin for joining me for another week. And next week we will break it all down, get you ready for Super Bowl 59. Talk to you later.